of one rental at a time. And if you don't know already, we do a live morning show at 7:30 a.m. called the Daily Financial News. And just the other day, one of the topics we talked about is the potential for the federal minimum wage to be raised from existing $7.50 to $15 an hour. I was interviewed over the weekend on another financial show where we talked about what the impact of a potential federal minimum wage hike to $15 were. We talked about inflation, demand, unemployment, things of that nature. And the interviewer, so the person asking me question, basically came down on the side of, we have a moral obligation to raise the minimum wage from $7 to $15. As an economist, as someone who kind of has been doing this for 20 some odd years, that's a slippery slope, at least for my internal kind of numbers brain. So I came back to them and I said, you know what, if your moral obligation is to raise the minimum wage from $7.50 to $15, why don't we just take the minimum wage from $7.50 to $50 an hour? Because I believe everybody in America, if you work a full-time job, should make $100,000 a year, right? So $50 times 2,080 is just over 100 grand. Now, obviously that is kind of extreme, but I did it because I want to talk about what happens. Because sometimes when you talk about marginal changes, the deltas at the extreme either are missed or become unimportant or are dismissed because you just say we have a moral obligation. So let's just talk in theory, you and me, let's think about it. What happens if everybody minimum wage is 50 bucks? My first job was at fast food. I think it was $3.15. Let's say fast food jobs were 50 bucks an hour, right? High school kid. You get out of high school, you get out of college, whatever it is. Your minimum wage is $50 an hour. If you work full time, you make $100K. Today, with a $7.50 minimum wage, you're making about 15 or 16 grand. So again, it is extreme, and it is extreme on purpose, because I want to talk about what happens to demand pull inflation, what happens to cost push inflation. I want to talk about what happens to unemployment, and I want to talk about things that happen to you and I in the real world called rent, called food, called entertainment. And lastly, I want to talk about who wins and who loses if we take the federal minimum wage to $50 an hour. So first and foremost, demand pull inflation is something I believe in. I think every economist kind of tracks their most important metric, and that is mine, because it keys on the consumer. The American economy, last time I saw it, was 65 to 68% consumer driven. We like to spend, we like to shop, we like to go into debt. So I ask you, if you make 15,000 today, or 25, or 40, or 60, or 80, and you suddenly make $100,000 a year, what do you do? Do you suddenly save the difference? Historically speaking, probably not. Historically speaking, what happens is we have, you sort of try to change your circumstance to match your income. You kind of get fancy if you listen to Gary Vee. You buy a nicer car, you buy nicer food, you get nicer clothes. However, there is one important wrinkle. You, the individual, did not just go from 15, 20, 40 to 100 grand a year. Everybody went to 100 grand a year. So you didn't get a raise. Everyone got a raise, potentially. So now we have a lot of consumers flush with capital that are likely going to go shopping. And it's important to point out here, we are not making anything more. We are not providing any more services. So guess what happens to the price of everything we buy? It goes up. And one would argue goes up extremely. If you want to have hyperinflation, you want to see a shirt, an Apple, a car double, triple, or quadruple almost overnight, take the minimum wage from $7.50 to $50. Demand pull inflation would be fierce, it would be fast, and it would be unavoidable. And we would all feel it almost overnight. It would be extreme. It would be bad. Next, cost push inflation. So let's just go back to my first job making $3.15 an hour or whatever it is in fast food. I think we had like 18 or 19 employees. And I don't know for sure, but I got to imagine nobody made more than 20 grand a year. Now, granted, this is in the 80s. That's how old I am. But still, if all 18 of those individuals made 100 grand minimum, now granted, I was part-time, so, allow me some wiggle room, but hopefully you get the picture. That operator whose income or expenses just for wages used to be, I don't know, what's 20 times 18? 260 grand a year. It's now 1.9 million. How expensive is that hamburger, those French fries, that Coke? How expensive is that going to be? A hamburger might be freaking $50 because the operator of that fast food joint cannot simply pass on that wage increase. Prices will go up. And that will go up throughout the supply chain. I don't know all of the elements in the supply chain of a hamburger, but that goes from the farmer to the processor, to the packager, to the shipper, just everybody has to pay more. It would be extreme and it would be bad. And you and I would feel it overnight. So now let's talk about unemployment. Unemployment. What do you think would happen to that fast food chain whose wages went from $280,000 a year to 1.9 million? Well, probably going to go out of business. But if they can hold on and raise prices enough, they're going to get skinny. They are frankly going to bring in automation. We have already seen automation brought in. I remember going to my first McDonald's about 2 years ago, and they have a little kiosk to order food. They've cut the clerks in half because of that kiosk. The only fast food chains that would be operating would be ones that could do it autonomously. They may have 1 or 2 engineers running around, making sure the robots are performing appropriately, maybe doing the one-off exceptions. But unemployment for the low-skilled employee, your options would almost disappear. Wages are tied to value creation. And operators have choices, right? At least in a fast food example, right? Employee or robot. These are, choices that would be made. How about food? You go to the grocery store today and you're used to buying 3 apples for $2 or whatever it is. Do you have any idea what apples would cost? You have any idea what that would be? This, apples would be $75. Because again, when you raise minimum wage from $7.50 to $50 an hour, we have not made one more apple. We have not added value anywhere in the economy. We have just changed an input price or an input cost. It has to come out at the end. That's what economists at the economy does. Okay, this is a real estate channel. What do you think happens to housing? What do you think happens to housing? You think or affordable homes are hard to get today? An affordable home in Fresno today is about 300 grand. But hey, if everybody makes 100 grand, both mom and dad, they make 200 grand a year, that Fresno home is going to probably be 1.8, 2.1 million dollars, because it is about payment, not about the price. This whole argument around $7.50 to $15 because it is a moral obligation is missing the point. Because if it is a moral obligation, then why not take it to 50? Why stop at 15? What's magical about 15? But here's the real rub. Do you know who wins and who loses? This should really piss you off. The winners. And they always win. And I'm tired of them winning. The rich win. The people who own assets win. The people who have established fixed rate debt before the increase win hugely. If you bought a house for 150 grand, took out 120K mortgage before the increase, dude, you could pay it off in 2 years if this happened. That's the beauty of fixed rate debt in an inflationary environment. Just think about that. If you can get 30-year debt today at 3% and we raise the minimum wage by double or more, as I'm talking about here, you are going to be paying it off with cheaper dollars. And oh, by the way, the asset's going to increase because of inflation. Now, who loses? And unfortunately, the same people lose most of the time, and it sucks. First off, if you're a consumer looking to climb the ladder of asset ownership or just live day to day, you lose big time. Your house has gone from 300 grand to 1.9, right? It's hard to buy still. Apples went from 75 cents to $5 or $50 or whatever they'd go to. And then finally, the low skilled labor. If you don't have a skill that's in demand, you are literally selling physical hours. That's all you got. It's going to be really hard to employ you because robots, right? You buy them once, kind of do some maintenance, good to go. So in the end, again, I'm not opposed to raising the minimum wage. Absolutely not. I just didn't like that twist this person tried to zing me with because my argument was too strong. So in the end, raising the minimum wage from $7.50 to $15 will have some of these impacts. They won't be as extreme as taking them from $7.50 to $50. But again, I had to do this. I had to pontificate about $50 an hour because it will become obvious to everybody what would happen. Everything we talked about at $50 an hour will happen at 15, just at a different scale. An apple, instead of going from $1 to 50, might go from $1 to $3. A house that's affordable today at 300 grand might go, instead of to 1.9, might go to 350. Folks, unless we are adding value, making more stuff, getting the economy moving by producing stuff, raising the minimum wage doesn't do anything except increase input costs, probably put more burden on consumers, definitely put more burden on the unskilled labor. Anyways, let me know what you think. Love the comments below. Have a wonderful day. Take care.